So these are the images that come up when I googled Argentine 2001 collapse. Many of the things that it put a face to some of the topics discussed. Sometimes you just see it as numbers, as inflation numbers and unemployment numbers, but it's all lives and people and individuals getting their lives affected, sometimes even destroyed if they just fall below poverty lines. I like having the images as I talk, because they just bring a face, they put a face to all that, to all these numbers, and make us realize that it's people and events actually occurring and not just cold statistics. Now, in terms of what I was talking about before, the first part of these videos was about what happened in Argentina, the economic collapse in Argentina, how it happened, and kind of what it was like, the consequences it had. If you ask today to an Argentine person in general, if you ask anyone in Argentina, I'm talking about 9 out of 10 persons are going to be telling you that what concerns them the most is first the crime problem, which is out of control with so much violence and so much impunity in terms of criminals not getting caught and just keep doing what they do. And second, the inflation problem, the economic problem, which brings you uncertainty of what's going to be happening next week, next month, if you're still going to be able to afford a living. That's the two things that concern Argentine people the most 10 years after the economy collapsed. The economy still concerns us as much as it did then, and we have the crime problem to deal with that. In many cases it's worse, because it's bad if you have problems getting to the end of the month with your salary, but it's much worse if a loved one gets injured or killed on the streets because of the crime problem originated by the economy issue itself. So they're both problems caused by the same thing, but there's two sides of the coin in terms of what worries Argentine people the most as of today. Now, regarding what I was talking about before, how would this all go down in USA if it does? If the economy collapses in USA, would there be similarities to what happened in Argentina or not? Well, yeah, I'm absolutely sure that if the economy collapses in USA, there's going to be lots of similarities to how it happened in Argentina, because that's the way things are. You just have to look at recent economic problems, economic collapses in places like Iceland and in Greece, historically speaking, in Germany as well. When the economy collapses, people, we are all very much similar in many regards, in spite of cultural differences and in spite of specific situations that are different. We are, as people, we are very similar, so it's not a big surprise that we act in not that different ways. So I know there's lots of people, well, maybe not lots of people, but there are some people that say, no, this is going to be completely different because we're Americans, and if the economy collapses in USA, it's going to be different because because we want to feel different and we think that we're different. It's not that way. We're all very much similar, more similar than some people prefer to think. So there are going to be differences for sure. These are all guesses, because since it's something that hasn't happened, we can only estimate, but some of the estimations are pretty safe. For example, it's pretty safe to say that if all of a sudden the rich elite starts selling and moving to other markets and getting their money out of USA, people are going to be noticing it and they're going to be doing something about it. Unfortunately, that's something that's already happening, especially when you see some of the richest people on the planet putting their money into gold by buying directly gold mines and silver mines, like Warren Buffett did. He bought several gold mines. That's that person's way of investing in gold. Warren Buffett's not going to be ordering through internet a couple gold coins, he's directly gonna be buying a gold mine like he did. So in a way, the richest elites in USA is already knowing that the possibility of the dollar collapsing, it's real and it could happen. Now let's suppose that it does devaluate. All of a sudden the dollar devaluates. People, what they would be doing is rushing to the banks and getting as much money of the banks as possible, as fast as they can. And that's exactly what happened here. So that's going to be a similarity. The bank runs, that's going to be a similarity if the economy collapses in USA. That means that the only alternative left is going to be banks' accounts getting frozen. And all the money you have left is left on the ATMs. And the ATMs will be running dry in a matter of minutes. So it's completely understandable that this will happen in such a way. And it's understandable that if you're going to be preparing for this, you want to have a month's worth of expensive, or two if you can afford it, in cash at home. In case this happens, in case the economy collapses in USA, you will be needing cash in hand and not running to the ATMs like everyone else. Well, will there be violence and rioting on the streets? Well, another guess, but yeah, absolutely. If this happens, if banks close the doors and accounts get frozen and the currency is devaluating and there's a state of such uncertainty on the streets, by all means, there's going to be violence in USA. You'll be seeing people taking the streets. You'll be seeing people that never did it before going protesting on the streets and asking for the resignation of the president or the minister of economy or whoever it is, because they're going to be very pissed, and understandably so. When this happens, that will be happening just like it happened here. People looting as well, people let's just underprivileged people looting, taking advantage of the general distress situation. The looters and the rioting, it's going to be visible, and it's going to be causing an impact on the American society in general. Even if the worst part of the crime problem is going to be developing on its own years to come after the economy collapse itself, those images are going to be the most powerful one. And my little experiment with a Google search just proves that. The images that you see when you look up Argentine economic collapse are the ones that were caught during those weeks, and those first weeks and those first months after the economy collapses, because that's the most visible part. No one talks about the average Joe getting killed on the street because of the criminal society created due to the economic collapse. No one talks about that. No one takes pictures of it and relates it to the economic collapse itself. But this is what stays. Those first images of rioting and looting, that's going to be sticking if it happens in USA. Differences? Well, for example, we don't have the problem, the racial tensions that you guys sometimes have in some of the cities in USA. We don't have none of that here. So that's something that's going to be different. The people that are already looking for reasons to be evil and mean to another will just have one more excuse to do so. So the racial tensions will just be getting much worse after the economic collapses, and the gangs that are involved in criminal activities and such, they're just going to be getting much worse, more violent, more ruthless, and in some ways it's going to be related to these times of civil unrest when the middle class took the streets so as to protest. They're going to be realizing that they can get away with a lot more than they thought they could, and there's not going to be enough funds to put enough people, enough cops on the streets. So they understand that they can get away with a lot of criminal activities, and there's no enough funds to stop it. So that's going to be a problem. Different from Argentina because we don't have those racial tensions, but it's going to be a problem if it happens in USA. Crime becoming a permanent rampant thing as it got in Argentina? I don't think so. I think that people are going to be surprised by the amount of crime, permanent crime, after the economic collapse in USA. If it comes to that, people are going to be unprepared for it because it's just not the thing you guys do over there. You're not always worried about people breaking in and getting mugged on the street. it happens, but it's not something that happens enough so as to be a real constant concern on daily basis for the average American citizen. And it is for the average Argentine citizen something to worry about, being shot on the streets and being mugged on the streets. Even if you have a bit more of money, getting kidnapped on the streets as well. Those are all things that I just don't think will be as bad in USA on the long run as they are in Argentina, mostly because USA is a first world country. You have other, you weren't, if you ever collapse, it's gonna be from the top. You're gonna be a first world country that collapses. In our cases, we collapsed when we were already on our knees, living through a decade beyond our means. But we were already a third world country to begin with, so the problems are more deeply rooted than they are in USA. The inflation, absolutely, is going to be similar. The rampant inflation destroying the middle class in USA. If the economy collapses, just absolutely certain it's going to be happening, that the inflation is going to be destroying the purchasing value of the dollar as it devaluates. At the same time, it also creates a possibility to reconstruct the national industry, because the exchange rate, it's cheaper, and the foreign imports are not as cheap as they used to be. So there's going to be more industry in the long run, and on midterms, and in the long run, someone's going to be figuring it out that it's now the time to make locally what used to be imported before. So it's bad, but on the other side, it at least has a positive side to it, which means that because of the devaluation, because of the dollar devaluating, if it comes to that, the local industry will be going up. What about media control? Something that we've experienced a lot with the new government, the liberal socialist government we now have in Argentina. Unfortunately, that's something that's very similar in USA as well. The current leaders in USA have this socialist lefty bent that it just leaves such a sour taste in my mouth every time I see it, because it reminds me so much of what's happening here. All these guys going out and saying, yeah, I'm a socialist, so what? I'm a communist, I'm a lefty, I'm left-leaning because I'm anti-capitalist and all that stuff. That's something that reminds me so much of home, and it's so unfortunate because it never leads to anything good. It only leads to populism and more poverty, and the glorification of poverty as if being poor is something good instead of something that's is supposed to be avoided by the government. No, it's all of a sudden it's good to be poor and have nothing, and when that happens, you only have political parties that feed off poor people, political parties that need poor people so as to survive. And if the government itself needs such people, then it's not going to be stopping poverty, will it? If it needs poverty so as to stay in power. Other differences, for example, the differences of how the urbanization in USA is done. As I said before, we were already a third world country, so there are many differences. People here already had a public transportation system. Even if you didn't use it, it was at least still there. The buses and trains, people got from point A to point B. You could get with a reasonable public transportation system. In USA, it's taken as a given that everyone has a car and has money so as to keep it fuel to move around. And in some cases, there's not even public transportation or alternative transportation methods to get around. What's going to be happening when people can no longer afford the fuel they need to get by, and there's no transportation alternatives for them? Those are a few of the differences. The way the urbanization is constituted in USA, it's very different from Latin American countries, where it's taken as a given that a person should be able to use public transportation and even walk, if it comes to that, from one place to another. So guys, those are some of the differences and similarities that I see between USA, the economic collapse in Argentina, and what could possibly happen in USA if it ever comes to that. Hope you enjoy it. Remember to subscribe and check the modernsurvivalist.com blog. See you on our next video.